Hello, friends, and welcome back to Get Ready with America, a series that I planned months in advance that keeps getting changed by amended timelines and constantly changing information, so it feels like just another campaign. Today, we'll be talking about the May 18th primary election in Pennsylvania, where they have partisan elections for judges for all three of their statewide courts. Talking about the PA courts requires talking about the fiasco of last year, so strap in for some bad memories. They're also voting on ballot questions to amend the state constitution to change emergency declarations and prohibit discrimination based on race. It's 2021, right? Then, of course, we'll talk about how to vote, because while it's primary, it's also a special, so everyone can vote for some of the things. For today's look, I'm honoring the Pennsylvania Dutch and doing no makeup. Just kidding. I'll be channeling my inner Liberty Belle, cracked out the box but still yelling at you to go vote with a multi-metal look. Let's get into it. I know we don't want to rehash 2020, but it's actually incredibly important to review the fights that happened in the Pennsylvania legislature and courts due to last year's election. Actually, we're going to start even further back with the passage of Act 77 in 2019, which was a nonpartisan bill that legalized no-excuse mail-in voting for all registered voters. As part of the law, all mail-in ballots were due on election day by 5 p.m. It was perfect that they implemented this prior to the 2020 primary, which was originally scheduled for April 28th, but the pandemic pushed it back to June 2nd. With a high number of mail-in ballots returned in this new system, it took 5 weeks to count and certify the vote. Around this time, Republicans, led by our former president's campaign, filed the first set of lawsuits against the state contesting the constitutionality of ballot drop boxes and challenging counting ballots that did not include the secrecy envelope. Those suits were thrown out shortly before the general election. In late summer, Governor Tom Wolf set an emergency declaration that allowed mail-in ballots postmarked by Election Day to be counted if they arrived by November 6th due to the delays with the Postal Service. This was upheld by the state Supreme Court, along with continued use of satellite election offices for early voting and using drop boxes to collect ballots across the state. Republicans were mighty displeased as extensions, drop boxes, and satellite offices were not part of the law they passed, and the legislature is supposed to get the final say in these laws. I'm going to interject here to talk about the situation from the perspective of someone who was talking to voters. People were freaking out because they had requested mail-in ballots that were supposedly sent to them in late September, but still hadn't arrived 3 weeks later. Now, when someone requests a mail-in ballot, they must return that ballot, either filled out with their vote or surrendering it to vote in person. If you don't receive that ballot that you requested in the mail, if you go to vote in person, you have to vote provisionally, meaning your vote isn't counted until they have confirmed that you did not otherwise vote. Thus, people were freaking out that they wouldn't get their ballots in time to mail back and either would have their vote delayed if they voted provisionally or wouldn't vote at all if they couldn't go to the polls. This was definitely an emergency that could disenfranchise tens of thousands of voters, which, by the way, the margin of victory in Pennsylvania was tens of thousands of votes, and it's the kind of thing that the governor, secretary of state, and state Supreme Court should enact emergency protocol. This all led to the next and almost never-ending set of lawsuits from Republicans. The Trump campaign filed a suit to block the election results from being certified because some counties allowed voters to amend their mail-in ballots if there were discrepancies, known as ballot curing, but others didn't allow that, and thus all votes should be null and void. Of course. They also filed suits to block the ballots that came in under Governor Wolf's extension and a couple other technicalities. Judges in the Commonwealth Court, which is overwhelmingly Republican, ruled in favor of the campaign, but those decisions were overturned by the state Supreme Court and then not taken up by the U.S. Supreme Court. In fact, SCOTUS only just closed the book on all the lawsuits in PA by dismissing the final challenge from a congressional candidate who was fighting election results because of the extension. The legal challenges were wrapped up, but we're not done with this. But we'll get to that later. For now, let's talk about elections. In Pennsylvania, judges for the 3 statewide courts who review and rule on city and county court decisions are elected along party lines, one of 7 states who do this. While campaigning with a particular party affiliation, they cannot promise to rule a certain way on any specific issues. Once elected, a judge serves a 10-year term, then runs in a nonpartisan yes or no election to keep their seat until they resign or retire. In the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, Republican Chief Justice Thomas Saylor is retiring, having hit the age limit of 75. The court itself is the highest in the the Commonwealth, and for the most part chooses the cases it's going to hear. 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat are running for the seat. Since these elections on May 18th are primary elections, Democrat and current Superior Court Judge Maria McLaughlin will run uncontested and be on the general ballot in November. The state Republican Party has endorsed current Commonwealth Court Judge Kevin Brobson for the nomination. The Pennsylvania Bar Association rated McLaughlin, Brobson, and Republican candidate and Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas Judge Paula Patrick as highly recommended for the Supreme Court seat. They did not rate final Republican candidate and current Commonwealth Court Judge Patricia McCullough, and that might be because her husband is in jail for stealing from an elderly woman's trust fund, like some I Care a Lot shit. I mentioned the outgoing Chief Justice is a Republican, and that Chief Justice seat is actually being replaced by a Democrat, as Democrats took the majority of the court in 2015. In recent years, the Democratic majority ruled that the congressional district map needed to be redrawn ahead of the 2018 elections, which resulted in representation in Congress going from 13 Republicans and 5 Democrats to 9 and 9. Between this decision and the court upholding Governor Wolf's emergency voting expansion, it'll be interesting to see if in November Republicans hold on to the seat or Democrats widen their majority. The Superior Court is also replacing a retiring judge for a 10-year initial term. This court is made up of 15 judges who sit on 3 judge panels that hear appeals from criminal, family, and civil cases from the county courts. They're required to hear cases that come to them, unlike the Supreme Court. So in many instances, they are giving a final ruling on these cases. Notable recent rulings in the PA Superior Court are throwing out the drug and gun-related conviction of Meek Mill in 2019 and allowing an extension on the statute of limitations in some of the cases of alleged Catholic priest abuse. Running for the seat are 3 Democrats and 1 Republican who are all recommended by the PA Bar. There isn't much tea on this race, but it's necessary to pay attention to for the way the court fits into the overall system of the Commonwealth. Plus, if current Judge McLaughlin goes on to win the Supreme Court seat in November, that'll leave an opening for one of these candidates to be tapped to fill. The Commonwealth Court is filling 2 vacancies for their 9-judge body, which focuses on disputes involving the state and state agencies. It's divided into three-judge panels that convene in Harrisburg, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. Their recent claim to fame is the aforementioned ruling in favor of the Trump campaign. So, yeah. With there being 2 seats open, the top 2 candidates from each party will go on to the general in November. One of those seats is currently being held by Judge Andrew Compton, who was appointed to a vacancy in 2019 and is a Republican running for an official 10-year initial term on the court. 4 Democrats are running. Allegheny County Common Pleas Court Judge David Spurgeon received a highly recommended rating from the PA Bar, while the others, including 2 more Common Pleas Court judges, received recommended ratings. There is one other Republican running, Stacey Wallace, and she'll automatically move on to the general since only 2 Republicans are running, but the PA Bar gave her a not recommended rating because they think she lacks the depth and breadth of experience and preparation necessary. I'm going to link a story in the description box from my beloved WHYY Phillies NPR affiliate if you'd like more information on the courts, the candidates, and the campaigns. For those of you in Pennsylvania who are not a registered Democrat or Republican and therefore can't vote for judges or county or municipal races on the 18th, don't worry. You can still vote for ballot questions, and man, are there some fun ones. Going back to our story about the 2020 elections, Republican House members attempted to pass legislation that would have ended the disaster declaration that led to extensions in drop boxes and satellite offices. Oh my. They fell short of 2/3 majority needed to override a veto of that legislation from Governor Wolf, so they opted to propose constitutional amendments that limit his executive powers. These amendments need to be okayed by voters, and thus we have ballot questions. Question 1 would amend the law so the General Assembly would not need approval from the governor to end or extend a disaster emergency declaration that the governor declared, simply a majority vote from the House and Senate. Question 2 sets any disaster emergency declaration to 21 days, down from 90 days, that only can be extended by the General Assembly and cannot be followed by another declaration for the same circumstances by the governor. This is truly the circle of life of democracy. If you can't make the law do what you want, ask different people to change the law. My guess is that this was a highly calculated move. They're likely banking on more Republican/supporters of this amendment coming out to vote than Democrats/opponents. Question 3 would amend Article 1 of the Pennsylvania Constitution to prohibit restricting or denying an individual's rights under the law because of race or ethnicity. Now, I'd like to thank the GOATs at the League of Women Voters for providing some background on this amendment. It was originally introduced in the wake of police brutality cases and protests as an amendment to a different constitutional amendment bill to restrict a governor's emergency declaration powers. Of course, they're all connected. Article 1, Section 26 of the Constitution prohibits discrimination against any person in the exercise of any civil right, which in most cases would be considered kind of like an equal protection clause. This amendment would be a state-specific clause to protect individuals from racial or ethnic discrimination from government entities. The big reason it's a good ad is that it would bar future legislation that could potentially discriminate based on race when it comes to schooling, housing, or even voting. Where things get murky is the potential for white people to use this to bring reverse discrimination cases, as well as an argument that it would make targeted diversity programs in hiring, admissions, contracting, and other opportunities no longer viable. I've linked the write-up on this ballot question in the description box so you can take a closer look, but ultimately everyone is pretty on board with this going through, and my girls just gotta find all the angles as a nonpartisan organization. Are we there? Can we talk about voting? Oh, thank God. The deadline to register to vote in this election is today, May 3rd. As I mentioned before, you must be a registered Democrat or Republican to vote for judges and county and municipal races. You can register online in Pennsylvania, even if you don't have a license or state ID. You can put a digital copy of your signature on the registration form and submit it. Wow. Everyone else, please get on that. As discussed at the top of this video about 5 hours ago, anyone can apply for a mail-in ballot. The deadline to apply is Tuesday, May 11th, and completed ballots must arrive in your county elections office by Election Day, May 18th at 5 p.m. in order to be counted as per the law that the Republicans agreed to. You can also vote early in person at your county elections office until May 11th. If you want to vote on the 18th, polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and in Philadelphia, your polling location could be the garage of wrong. The state's election website is actually full of all the information you could possibly need and is pretty easy to navigate. I, of course, have linked it in the description box. For the record, their voter participation brand is Votes PA, which, snooze. How the hell is Go Vote still the best we've come across? New voter participation campaign branding suggestion: participate. Thanks to my brother. So many opportunities with that one. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with me through this one. Some things I didn't talk about in this video: 4 special legislative district elections, mayoral races in Harrisburg and Pittsburgh, and the district attorney race in Philadelphia. Also, all the county and city judges, and whatever is going on in your town. There's so much. Check your county elections website, found through Votes PA site linked below, for info on the races in your area, as well as the early voting times. Please like this video, leave a comment whether you're Team Wawa or Team Sheets, and subscribe to my channel to learn more about voting in other states. If you're enjoying this series and want to support me, please check out my Patreon. Think of it like thanking me for all this vital info with a coffee every month. Join me next week, next week, for an all-new video on an all-new state. Thanks, friends. I'll see you soon.